Hi, Ketchup Crew.
Hi, Ketchup Crew.
We lost
Hey,
Katie. Hello. Have you got a new haircut?
Maybe since you've last seen me. I think I got it last week. I got it last Tuesday. So maybe.
It looks great.
Thanks. It feels really good. It's easier. And I like how good it looks messy. Like I can just genuinely just mess it the fuck up and it'll still look like, cool, I can leave the house like this. This is fine. That is my ideal.
That does sound great.
How's everyone doing?
Got my second vaccination today.
Yay!
So that's good. My arm's a bit sore and I'm a bit like maybe having trouble temperature regulating, but I can't really, you know, when you're like, is it cold? Is it colder than it has been? I've got no idea.
It is cold. I have been cold today.
Okay.
It has been colder here. It is 17 degrees C here now, and it has been much warmer.
Yeah. I can't really tell. I think I'm just not quite 100%, but I don't feel terrible or anything. So that's fine. Yeah. Andrada, what food are you making?
Oh.
Ooh, very good.
What are that? Sweet potatoes?
Bergs. I love asparagus.
Yeah, steak with sweet potato wedges, asparagus, and mushrooms sauteed with garlic.
That sounds amazing.
I am in fact just about to put on steak and garlic sauteed mushrooms. I'm just cooking. I'm in my kitchen now. I don't have any asparagus though. I feel left out.
I have spare.
Hi, Jenny. Hi.
Hey, Jenny.
Hi.
How's all the theatering going?
Theatre is wonderful. It's just so great.
Yeah, costume rules.
Oh yeah, your costume was amazing.
Yeah, it really was. So cool.
Rizzo keeps finding noisy things to play with.
I'm going to film this and put it in another room.
Okay, that's a good shout. Enrichment for the dog.
He's been so good though. Like he's been really good today.
Yeah, he has been really good today.
Do we get to say hi to the dog?
Oh, you missed it? Yes, of course you do. Just a sec.
I mean, the Ketchup Crew hasn't. I got here right when you started.
Oh, that's true. That's true. Say hello to our little dude. The dude.
Hi, Rizzo. Hello.
He's like, unhand me, you blackguard.
Good boy, Rizzo.
Nice to see you know your judo, sir.
I got to hear some bagpipes this weekend. It was very exciting. I was sitting on the dock at my friend's family cabin at sunset, and I'd heard that this guy sometimes does this while he's out at the lake, but I hadn't seen him the entire time there, and it was our last night. And then suddenly I hear bagpipes in the distance, and this man at sunset, whenever he's around, goes out on the boat, and his partner drives him around like in front of all the cabins, and he just plays bagpipes for a little while at sunset.
Wow.
Hey.
That's so cute.
I didn't realize like just how badly I needed to not be in a city for a little bit. It was very, very good for me.
It's really nice, isn't it?
I haven't properly left Winnipeg the entire pandemic, so it was about fucking time. Yeah.
Tell us about your unfortunate encounter with a small deer, Andrada.
Okay, you're allowed to shoot first. That's acceptable. Rory.
I've got a cute bagpipe story from Japan. I have two cute bagpipe stories from Japan. They're my only bagpipe stories from Japan, but they are both adorable. So one is that in the tiny, not anywhere kind of place that I used to live, I was running through the park and heard bagpipes. And my brain did this like, oh, bagpipes. And then realized that I wasn't in Scotland, like after I recognized the bagpipes. And there was just this dude practicing bagpipes in the park. And I went and talked to him. And he was just like, oh yeah, in Tokyo about 10 years ago, I heard someone playing the bagpipes and it made me feel like kind of strong inside. So I moved to Scotland to learn the bagpipes.
That's impressive.
Like a reverse weave.
Yeah. Yeah, what?
That was
The
impressive.
reverse weeaboo. He traveled to the mystic west to study the blade.
To study the bagpipe.
Yeah. And then the other thing is that Scottish country dancing is a thing in Japan. So I had like a group of elderly Japanese people who did Scottish country dancing, which was good when I didn't have much Japanese, because I could do the thing with people without needing to like be able to converse very much. And they had a Burns night and they hired the two bagpipers in Saitama you can hire who are a married couple and wear matching Scottish outfits.
That rules.
Oh my god.
Also very cute.
Oh.
So.
That is utterly adorable.
So wholesome. Oh man.
I ended up
can't-
going to an Irish ceilidh in Tokyo, and it was much the same. There was a family who'd moved out there, and a couple there who'd moved to Ireland for a bit to try and learn more out here. Discovered that there's more Irish dancing anywhere else in the world other than Ireland. Pick any country, and there's more Irish dancing than there is in Ireland.
I think Japan has more Scottish country dancers than Scotland.
There's 2 Scottish country dance troupes here, I think. So, they exist.
Hey Tara, hey Michael, hey Araha.
Man, I can't wait to go to a ceilidh again. Get drunk, jump around. Yeah.
It's way too vigorous for my liking.
I took him to one ceilidh and he turned into a waterfall.
It is too strenuous to be wearing that much wool.
It is quite
That's
strenuous,
fair.
but if you want, I call ceilidhs without any gender bullshit. So just if anyone is looking for that, just a reminder that you don't have to do ceilidhs with like men and ladies being talked.
But like also the best thing about like Highland dress at Kaylee's is watching it slowly come off over the evening. Like there are so many layers. It's like a 6-hour striptease.
I was just going to say, how slowly would you like it?
If you ever find yourself in San Francisco Bay Area on a Friday night, there's a ceilidh. So Wednesday night, there's a ceilidh in the Starry Plough in Berkeley. They are adorable people. It's a mix of Scots and Irish stuff. They are adorable people. They love guests. And if you turn up in traditional Scottish Highland gear, they might adopt you.
But also Americans have their own contra stuff, and contra is like smooth ceilidh that feels a little bit like bluesy fusion movement sometimes, and it's fucking great. But
Yeah, it's really fun. I got thrown into it once and had no idea what I was doing.
Katie, you have to do the thing.
It's a story time. It's a story time.
I haven't heard Katie do it in so long.
This is so good. Okay, before we start, I should let you guys know that if you hear a bubbling noise, it's the wine that I'm fermenting.
Wow.
And it's not me farting, okay? So you're aware.
I'll tell you if it is actually breakfast farting. I can tell the difference.
Yeah.
I appreciate that, Rory.
He'll be like, oh, that's a fart. Tried to give you
What a
thought.
service you'll provide for us all. Also,
Okay.
don't forget to mute yourselves because we are not all Frankie anymore.
Before muting yourselves, do we need to recap for anybody?
Can you just like remind me where we left off?
Yes.
Oh,
Okay.
Jenny needs a recap.
Okay, so Felicity went all the way to Zurich, right? She went with Alexander Platt. Turns out he's a dick. Who could have foreseen this turn of events? Some very terrible men. She met up with Joanna, and her and Joanna are trying to steal. Oh, right, mother of a cliffhanger. That's right. Her and Joanna are trying to steal Joanna's mother's stuff, which includes which is going to be like whatever she has left at this museum, right? So they're looking for Sybil Glass's things, and so Joanna has created a diversion. While I want the deer story as well. So Joanna's created a diversion while Felicity is in the basement of this museum trying to find stuff, and she just went around a corner of this very dark basement, and she got scared by this stuffed gibbon. So, are you sitting comfortably? Then I'll begin. You furry little bastard, I hiss at the gibbon. Whoever placed you there is very cruel. The gibbon says nothing in return. Thank God, or I might have sincerely shat myself. And then, down the aisle, something moves. Fear, according to Descartes, is one of the passions that originates where the body attaches to the soul. Having almost 100 years and quite a lot more books at my disposal than Descartes, I'm not certain I believe this, for all my symptoms in that moment are purely physical. I go lightheaded, my muscles seize, then begin to tremble. Sweat breaks out beneath my arms, and it's only the clinical analysis of these effects that keeps them from knocking me over entirely. There's someone here, creeping around in the dark with me, someone who must have been here all along. I don't know whether to run or to press forward, betting on the hope that the movement was a draft or a precarious arrangement collapsing. Perhaps it's Platt, just as stuck as we are in his attempts to claim Sybil Glass's effects and resorting to the same methods. I shrink backwards, and my elbow knocks a flower lying upon the shelf, disrupting it. It doesn't fall like a flower. It drops hard and shatters. There's a very human gasp. Through the darkness, I can make out a silhouette framed by the motes of dust. The figure raises its head, then begins towards me, stride picking up from a quick walk into a run. I turn and run too, cursing my short Montague legs that give me no speed or advantage over the panther chasing me. I feel someone snatch at me, and I turn, flailing with my fingers tensed into claws and trying to find eyes or the soft meat at the throat or some part of body that's mostly thin tissue I can dig my nails into. But before I can, I'm grabbed around the waist and tackled into the gibbon, all three of us, me, my attacker, and the gibbon crashing to the ground. My neck goes stiff, an instinct to protect my head from striking the floorboards, and I feel the wrench as I land. My attacker is over top of me, straddling me, and I can feel the tight material of a skirt pulled around my waist. She grabs my arms before I can move, pinning my hands to the ground at my side, then leans in close enough that I can see her face. It's Sim. She looks as startled to see me as I am to see her. Her grip on my arms loosens, and had I not been so dazed by the fall, I might have had the foresight to pull free. But I can hardly breathe, let alone shimmy out. Between gasps, I managed to choke out a single word, her name. Sim! It does not come out as I intended it to, which is like a squirt of citrus into the eye. Instead, it's a small, wretched mule. She's far less winded than I am, which is embarrassing, for it was she who did the actual sprint and tackle. All I had to do was fall. What are you doing here? She hisses at me. It's not a question I feel the need to answer, so I retort with, let me go! It comes out a bit stronger than my previous statement. Not so much a kitten as an adolescent cat. Sim lets my arms go, giving them a bit more of a shove into the ground than is really necessary. Get out of here, Felicity. This hasn't anything to do with you. And those things aren't yours. They're Joanna's. What things? Sybil Glass's things, I say, louder than is advisable, for Sim clamps a hand over my mouth. Keep your voice down. I bite her thumb, and she lets go with a curse. That's what you're here for, isn't it? I demand. You thought Sybil Glass's work was at the Hoffman's house. That's why you were hoping to find what you were hoping to find there. Her jaw sets. It belongs to my family. In the wrong hands. Your hands are the wrong hands. Get off of me. I don't want to hurt you. Then don't. Then stay out of my way. She pushes herself up and starts back down the aisle, but I grab her around the ankle. She trips, crashing to the ground and taking out a shelf of ceramics with her. I scramble to my feet again, climbing over her with a high step so she can't pull the same trick on me before darting down the aisle. Sim grasps a handful of my skirt, both pulling me backward and dragging herself up with me as counterweight. One hand is clawing at her boot, and I remember the marlin spike. I kick her hard in the shin, and she yelps, stumbling sideways into a shelf. A pod of seeds burst into the air like a disrupted beehive, and we are enveloped in a strange chalky dust that starts us both coughing. My eyes burn, and I double over, hands pressed to my face and trying not to rub them, though the temptation is strong. Sim grabs my arm and I stumble blindly down the aisle, and I throw an elbow hoping to hit her in the face, but she ducks, and I slam again. I slam instead into a case of delicate spiral shells that crumble under me. We are single-handedly wiping out a slew of the world's natural wonders. Sim twists my arm behind my back, but I step hard on her foot in retaliation. She must barely feel it, for she got monstrous clomping boots on, but it's enough that when she tries to move, it throws her off balance. I snag one of those tags from the shelf before me, and I take a wild look, trying to gauge where we are. Thank God the case is weighed down with actual rocks, or I would have ripped it straight off the shelf. Jeer us all. We're getting close. Sim grabs me by the end of my plait and jerks me backwards hard enough that I shriek for the first time. Has anyone told you, she hisses, her breath damp and warm against my neck, that you are tenacious? Thank you, I reply. It wasn't a compliment. Anything can be a compliment if you take it as one. I grope around on the shelf behind me for an adobe pot and aim to crack it over her head, but she flings an arm up and breaks it over her elbow instead. Shining black powder that smells volcanic rains down between us. Sim doubles backward, a stream of dark blood dripping down her arm, and I wrench myself away from her and start fumbling for tags. On the lowest shelf, there's a hard leather case for documents with a shoulder strap, as well as a canvas sack splattered with a crust of chalky mud. The name stitched into the seam is S. Glass. I grab the leather case and throw it over my shoulder, then snatch up the canvas sack. The drawstring isn't pulled as tightly as I thought, and half the contents spill onto the floor. There's the tinkle of delicate glass breaking, and I scramble to scoop it all back into the sack. I'm groping through the darkness, my fingers brushing something damp, just as, from behind, Sim jumps on top of me. I think she'll try to wrestle the bag from me, but instead she clamps a hand over my mouth. Shut it, she whispers. Her voice has suddenly taken on a different tone than before, more weariness than fight. I try to throw her off, but she snaps. Felicity, stop, someone's coming. I go still. Sim raises her head, peering down the aisle into the darkness we came from. I can't hear anything for what feels like long enough that I'm ready to dismiss her warning as a distraction in hopes I'd lower my guard, but then a light starts to play along the ceiling. Then a man's voice calls out, Is someone there? Sim starts to scramble down the aisle with her hands and knees, in the opposite direction from the voice, and the stairs. I scramble after her, praying she has another way out. There are footsteps at the end of the aisle, and the lamp grows closer. Who's there? Sim breaks into a run, and I follow suit, thick dust and shards of pottery crunching beneath our boots. The case knocks against my shoulder blades. I chase Sim down the aisle to a cellar door in the back corner of the basement. She yanks a large, sturdy-looking vase over so she can stand tall enough to unbolt the doors and fling them open. Sim hoists herself up and onto the snowy lawn, then looks back at me. I think for a moment she's going to slam the doors shut in my face and leave me to the mercy of the curator, but she throws down a hand to help me up after her. It seems a moment of compassion before I realise I have Sybil Glass's things, and it's likely that she's saving more than me. She's bad at the hoisting. Her hands are slick, and my knee bangs painfully into the frame when her grip slips. She ends up dragging me through the snow while I kick at the air, struggling for purchase. I get a lump of ice down my dress and leave a sleigh track across the lawn with my face. Sim kicks in the cellar door as I clamber to my feet, spitting out mouthfuls of mud, and we take off at a run away from the cabinet, our heels kicking up sprays of wet snow. Joanna is at our appointed meeting spot, a statue 2 squares over of a man on horseback who no doubt did something heroic. She's sitting on the step up to the plinth, just beneath the horse's rearing hoof, but stands when she sees us sprinting towards her. Her shoes have cut tiny, perfect prints in the snow, like the tracks of a mouse that Sim and I stamp out as we approach. Joanna shrieks when she spots my companion and points an accusatory finger. You! Sim doesn't answer. She's doubled over, gasping for air. Did you lead her here as well? Joanna demands of me. Then, before I can answer, says, all my tormentors in one convenient place. She pivots back to Sim. You sneak into my home to steal from me and now dare to follow me here to see your job finished. Well, consider yourself soundly foiled yet again. I will see you arrested. I will see you prosecuted. I will drag you back to Bavaria by the ear and take you to court there if I must. Now back to me. At least her speechifying is giving us a chance to catch our breaths. Did you find them? I hold up the case for Joanna's inspection. I expect she'll be pleased, but instead she yips, You're bleeding! I look down. I thought the dampness was coming from the snow I had been yanked through, but my arms and the front of my cloak are streaked with blood. Am I? I ask in alarm. I don't think so. You're not, Sim says, and then she collapses. Onto me. She staggers sideways and collapses onto me, and while I can't truly blame her for her lack of aim, it is not a particularly comfortable thing to be fallen upon. We both tumble back into the street. My cloak is strangling me, and my skirt is rucked up to my knees, so I'm sitting in just my stockings in the snow. The scarf around Sim's head is coming undone, wet enough that it's plastered to her forehead. Instinct takes over, and I start stripping back her clothes, trying to find where the blood is coming from. It doesn't take long. One of her arms is slashed to ribbons from palm to elbow. I cracked a pot over her arm, but the cuts are studded with small shards of amber-tinted glass, the largest the length of my thumb. I remember something glass shattering from Sybil's bag when I pulled it free. Sim must have slid across it, the thick wool of her skirts and petticoats sparing her knees, but the thin linen shirt no match. The glass will need to be removed, the cuts stitched, but not now, and not here in the middle of a muddy street. Right now, the bleeding must be contained. I wrench off my scarf and wrap it around her arm. As I tug the cloth tight, I notice again the ink upon the inside of her arm. The cut stopped just short of cleaving the dagger in two. I look around for Joanna, only to find that she's bolted from our statue and is waving her arms to catch the attention of a policeman passing by. Hello, Piracy! Hilf mir bitte! I am a maiden and in need of distress. Pay me attention! Stop it! I snap at her. Stop it? She whirls on Sim and me. That girl has been apprehended as a robber and should be arrested. Yes, but I was also robbing, I say, pulling the makeshift bandage tight around Sim's arm. If Sim's arrested, I should be too. But you are reclaiming stolen property that is rightfully mine, Joanna argues. She's just stealing it. She's right here, Sim mumbles, pulling out my grip. She tucks her injured arm to her stomach, and when she shifts, I can see the blood has already soaked through my scarf and spotted the front of her bodice. She heaves herself to her feet, then immediately tips over again and sits down hard beside me. I won't leave her, I tell Joanna. She's hurt and she needs help, and I can help her. My whole body is aching from our tussle in the archive, so I'm not feeling any particular goodwill towards Sim either. But leaving her bloody and freezing in the snow goes against everything I believe, everything I am and want to be. Joanna must know this, but she still glares at me until a wicked breeze throws handfuls of needle flakes from the snowy lawn into our faces. We both flinch. I pull my collar up over my chin, trying to protect my skin laid bare by the absence of my scarf. We need to get out of here. Back to the boarding house, Joanna says. I can take care of myself, Sim mumbles to me, trying to pull herself up again. I'm not letting you stagger off into the city with a bleeding arm, I tell her. Where are you staying? Not far from here, she replies. I can see the hard line of her jaw jutting out as she clenches her teeth against the pane. Let us walk you, I say. I'll see to your arm, and then we can work out what to do next. Joanna starts to make a protest, but I cut her off. Frau Engel wouldn't allow a girl with a hangnail in, so she's so petrified of a sickness spreading. You can leave if you'd like, but I won't. Joanna lets out a huff, and it frosts white against the frigid air. Fine, she says, then snatches up the canvas sack from where I abandoned it on the pavement. But I'm carrying my mother's things. Sim directs us back into the old town, where the bright colours of the shop fronts are muted by the storm. The snow is beginning to stick, gathering in piles on banisters and windowsills, and making the roads treacherous and slick. We try our best to walk as close to the shops as possible, so that the oriel windows jutting out over the boulevard shelter us. I keep a hand on Sim. Her stride is growing less steady with every step. I consider telling her we need to stop somewhere closer than this mystery location we're delivering her to and let me do something about the blood. But I can't imagine any of the pubs we pass would be keen on me performing surgery on their barroom floor. The street Sim finally calls for a halt upon is so narrow that the three of us, side by side, take up the entirety of it. No carriage could have a prayer of squeezing down it unless they were willing to knock their lamps off. The shop looks unadorned, their fronts missing the bright hues and alpine imagery of the main roads. Instead, they're simple and sand-coloured. The shutters bang against the windows, testing their tethers in the wind. Here. Sim tips her head in the direction of a dark shop front. I'm nearly carrying her at this point, and when Joanna holds the door open for us, the bell jangles. I look up at the hanging sign, swinging wildly in the wind, but I don't speak enough German to understand the words. As soon as we have crossed the threshold, Joanna screams. I would have screamed too, had she not done it first and made me very much not want to look so silly and afraid. But even as a woman whose stomach rarely turns at a grisly sight, I feel myself going a bit lightheaded. For a moment of weightless shock, Sim and I are holding each other up. The room is full of human remains. Shelves of hands stripped of their skin so that the braided muscles are visible. Legs from the knees jutting out of a bucket, a row of delicate ears and thin, curled husks of noses. A long curtain of hair hangs upon one wall, a slow variegation from a fine corn silk to thick black. Several busts stare at us from the counter, eyes sightless and mouths dangling open, each in varying states of decay. No, not decay, I realise as I force myself to look closer, though my brain is screaming that what I should really be looking out for is the violent axe-wielding man who is no doubt sneaking up to turn us into so much human confetti. The faces do not look decayed as much as unfinished, like this is the workbench of some heavenly being who paused in the midst of the creation of man to get a snack and tea. What are they? Joanna asks beside me, her fingers strangling my free arm. They're wax, Sim says. She staggers to the counter and rings a bell before slumping backwards against it. In the grey light leaking in through the grimy windows, her skin looks slick and sweaty. Wax? I take a careful step toward a hollowed out torso and touch a cautious finger to the ribcage. It's sticky and firm, but I can feel the potential for give. It smells like honey, and when I pull away, I can see the whirls of my fingerprint left there. A curtain behind the counter parts, and a woman peers out. Her skin is darker than Sim's, and her long hair is wrapped in coils that are in turn wrapped around the top of her head. She has a leather apron thrown over her clothes, sleeves pushed up to her elbow, though the workshop feels nearly as cold as the street to me. Sim, she hisses in English. You said you were gone. I was, Sim says, her voice drowsy. You say gone, and then you return with 2 more unfortunates in tow. This isn't a hotel. Joanna and I exchange a glance, and she mouths, unfortunates. I haven't room for you all here, the woman says, bustling around from behind the counter and flapping a hand at us like we're stray cats wandered in from the street. Herr Kraus will have words. Are these your father's bastards too? It's just me, Sim says. They're going. The woman turns to Sim, then reaches out and takes her arm. What's wrong with you? I'm fine, Sim says, but she doesn't pull away. I'm not sure she has the strength. You're clearly not, I say. She's hurt. Here, let me look at it. Miss Hoffman has somewhere she wants to be. Sim's breathing is getting laboured, her grip on the counter less a steadying one and more a crutch. The shopkeeper's face puckers. Sim? Sorry, Sim mumbles. I can't feel my arm anymore. All right, that's it. I take Sim by the waist, hoisting her good arm around my shoulder, then turn to the shopkeeper. Do you have somewhere? I don't even finish before the woman is pulling back the curtain behind the counter and ushering us forward. Joanna steps up to Sim's other side, hoisting her with me. Sim is small, but she's still dead weight, and neither Joanna nor I have had much occasion in our lives to heft more than an encyclopedia. Joanna has her mother's bag and the leather case slung over her back, and it gives me a good clock in the back of the head when we duck around the corner. Behind is a workshop, full of more disconcerting wax figures, all in various states of assembly, and some with clockwork pieces jutting from the hollow limbs. One corner is littered with broken plaster, another crowded with a bench with a lamp upon it that looks just vacated. The tools are balanced on the corner beside a head, half of the scalp carefully threaded with dark hair. Opposite the bench, there's a stove with a pallet laid out beside it, and Joanna and I lay Sim upon it. Do you know what you're doing? The woman asks, as I unwind the scarf from Sim's arm for a better look. Yes, I say, with more confidence than I'm feeling. Could you fetch me the water and a clean towel? I fish into my pocket for my spectacles, give the lenses a quick rub down upon the tail of my skirt, then smash them onto my nose. And wax thread and a hefty needle, if you have it. There's nothing in this shop that isn't waxed, the woman says, throwing a shawl hanging beside the door over her shoulders. The pump's half a mile, I'll run. As the woman leaves, I toss the scarf from Sim's arm aside and bend over for a closer look at the cut. It is not as much blood as I anticipated, though if there's anything I've learned from being a woman, it's how not very much blood can manage to smear itself around and masquerade as a great deal more than it truly is. It's also not an excessively deep cut, no more than 1/4 of an inch, I estimate, with no fat or muscle peeking through. The blood is not spurting. The skin around the wound is not overly warm, the edges not particularly jagged. But somehow, this minor abrasion upon the forearm seems to be affecting the entirety of Sim's body. She's awake, but in just a few minutes, almost entirely unresponsive. When she blinks, it's slow and lethargic, like her eyelids are sticking, and I notice she hasn't swallowed in far too long. Her breath is coming fast and shallow, like she's struggling for it. I can feel my forehead creasing, which Monty has always been quick to remind me will cause me to wrinkle even more prematurely than squinting at tiny print in textbooks will. But there are certain levels of bafflement that require a good pinched forehead to truly be considered. Joanna brings me the lamp from the wax woman's workbench, her petticoats blooming behind her like a tail feathers when she crouches beside me. Since there's really no way for me to be close to Sim without being on top of her, I swing a leg over her waist and straddle her, tipping her mouth open to see if there's something blocking her throat and preventing the air from getting in. The bleeding has stopped, but her arm is beginning to swell, skin turning the mottled purple and black of a day-old bruise. The edges of the cuts are pulling inward before my eyes, like leaves curling into a sunbeam. There must have been something in it, I say, mostly to myself, but Joanna asks, something in what? When she cut herself on, whatever she cut herself on, I make a careful extraction of the longest piece of glass in Sim's arm and hold it up against the lamp. Beads of blood slide off a dried brown substance coating it. Venom? Poison? And now it's in her blood. Joanna is looking at me for an answer, her face pale, and I realise she thinks she's about to watch someone die. Someone who has given her quite a lot of trouble, but still a living, breathing being, slowly fading out before us like a shadow in the twilight. And all I can say back is, yes. Because I don't know what to do. Nothing in any of the books prepared me for this. Not a word of Alexander Platt's doctrines on blood and bone ever touched upon what it felt like to sit helplessly and watch as Death the Vulture creeps closer and closer. It didn't mention how to think quicker than your panic, look fear in the face and hope it blinks first, steady your hand and believe in yourself when you think there's nothing you can do. Sim takes another heaving breath. I can still feel her heartbeat, but her lungs seem to be failing her. It wouldn't matter if I knew what it was that had been in the glass. It's moving through her too fast to do anything, and I don't know how to get it out. Think, 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 I scold myself. Keep calm and think. Joanna, what's in your mother's bag? I don't know if there's anything to be learned from it, but it's something to do that isn't helpless staring. She wrenches the bag open and starts shoveling the contents out in handfuls. There are artist tools, a palette knife and turpentine, along with a box of charcoal and watercolours, squares of colour gone chalky with age. There's a leather roll which Joanna unfurls like a carpet. The top flap contains 3 unmarked vials, each full of shimmering powder in an opalescent blue, that same shade as the shallows of the Mediterranean. Below, a whole row of vials, each containing a different substance with their corks waxed shut. There are several missing, and one just a cracked rim and a stopper clinging to its lip. I drag the lamp closer to me and squint at the vials. There is a word inked atop each. They're almost so small and cramped I can't make them out, except for one which in clear block prints reads hemlock. It's a pouch of poisons, or rather, more likely, all poisons. The top 3 vials with the crystal powder are the only thing that appears duplicated, and none of them have writing on their stoppers. though they're marked with the mathematical symbol for infinity followed by a vertical line. I pop the stopper off one and sniff. It has a faint brine smell, like something collected from a beach. Sim's hardly breathing now, and each gasp shudders through her whole body. I can feel it in the places where we touch each other, my legs around her waist and her hand cupped in mine. The edges of her lips and eyelids are beginning to tinge blue. Infinity what? I think desperately, staring down at the vial. Why infinity? Unless it's not infinity. I turn the vial horizontal to me, and the infinity is replaced by what looks like a number 8 crowned with a single stroke. It's an alchemical symbol, shorthand used by pharmacists and apothecaries, which I learned from Dante Robles in Barcelona. It means to digest. So this is not a poison. This may be an antidote. I pour the contents of the vial into my palm and press it to Sim's face. Her breath is slow and infrequent, and I worry her lungs are too withered to take it in. But then a gasp, and when I pull my hand away, the powder is almost half what it was. A long, painful moment before her next breath, which takes in the rest. There's nothing more I know to do but sit and listen to Sim's gasping, trying to suck down lungfuls of air and hope. I stare down at her, my hips overtop hers and my own breath ragged inside me. I have 2 fingers pressed to the pulse point on her wrist, braced for the moment it stops. A piece of snow caught in my hair melts and drops down my cheek. Beside me, Joanna has her eyes closed, hands clasped before her. She might be praying. And then Sim's breath starts to come easier. It still sounds like the gasping of someone who has been running, but it seems like less of a fight. Her pulse starts to slow, no longer working quite so hard to make up for the rest of her body failing. She blinks once, then her eyes slide closed as she takes a steady breath. A slip from unconsciousness into sleep. What did you give her? Joanna asks, her voice hoarse. I don't know, I reply, my fist closing around the tiny vial now empty in my hand. Maybe it's medicine, maybe magic. Maybe it's enough for a woman to cross an ocean to find, enough to give your life to the study of, enough to kill for. When I let the vial fall, the sweat from my palms has transferred the inky symbol from the glass to my hand. The waxwork woman, who introduces herself to us as Miss Quick, most certainly not an actual name, but I don't press, returns with a bucket of water and roots around the shop for the rest of my requested items. When she realizes I'm prepared to remove the glass shards with my bare hands, she offers a set of tongs the length of my palm from her kit. I only use them on wax, she says, but I still wash them before digging into Sim's arm. With the shards removed, I clean out the cups and stitch them shut. Short of shredding Quick's blankets or my own bodice, there's nothing to use for bandages, so I unwrap the scarf from Sim's head and use that for bindings. Beneath it, her hair is coarse and cropped close to her head. When I'm finished, I put my spectacles up onto my forehead and press the heel of my hands against my eyes. They're stinging from doing such delicate work in poor light. Is she going to be all right? Quick asks from behind me. I hope so, I reply. She's no longer actively dying, which is a start. I toss the towel Quick offered onto the bucket of water, now brown and murky with blood. Are you 2 related? I ask her, then realize what an ignorant question it was, as it's based entirely upon their shared skin colour. Or, how do you know each other? Quick laughs. We know each other in the way everyone who sails upon the Crown and Cleaver does. She pulls up her sleeve, revealing a landscape of raised brands and scars and thick, ropey veins. At the inside of her elbow, she has the same inked illustration of a crown and a blade, hers much cruder and more faded into her skin than Sim's, like she could have been born with it. What's the Crown and Cleaver? Joanna asks. A corsair fleet that makes berth in a fortress outside Algiers, Quick replies, and with one of the largest holdings in the Mediterranean. My throat goes dry. In spite of my early suspicions, since I met Sim, corsair rings like a rock dropped into a bucket. Next to me, Joanna pales. You're pirates, she asks. Both of you? Only if you ask the Europeans, Quick replies. Are you a thief too? Joanna asks, just like her. If all the thieves in Zurich were hung, Quick replies, there'd be no one left. I'd be left, Joanna replies. Quick picks at something under her nail. Well, you're English, aren't you? You have the accent. How did Sim find you? I ask. Her father had his people in every city if you knew where to look, Quick replies. We watch out for each other if our paths cross. When she came to me, I put her up. So it's true then, Joanna asks. There is some kind of code among the pirates. Honour among thieves and all that. I had been preoccupied watching Sim's chest rise and fall with a steadier breath, but I realised suddenly what Quick has said. Sorry, what? Her father? Who's her father? Didn't she tell you? Quick picks up a handful of kindling from beside the stove and starts to pack it into the belly before reaching for a flint. She is the daughter of Murad Alja, his only daughter. When Joanna and I are clearly less impressed by this name than I expected, she qualifies. He is the Commodore of the Crown and Cleaver fleet. Hundreds of men sail under his command. The kindling catches and Quick shuts the door of the stove with a clang. You want something to eat? We're not part of your fleet, Joanna says. You don't owe us anything. Quick shrugs. I like to help the less fortunate than me, and there aren't many. Even with the stove lit, the workshop is bloody cold. A necessity, Quick tells us, or else the waxworks will melt. Joanna helps her assemble turnips and potatoes for a stew, as I watch over Sim, though my gaze drifts along the walls to the wax forms lining them. What do you make them for? I ask, unable to look away from a set of organs cast in wax, a heart, a set of lungs, and a stomach on stands. Some for curios, Quick replies. They have wax replicas of the royal family in England that move with clockwork, you know. Well, that will haunt my dreams, Joanna mutters. The Venuses are for the medical school, Quick says, pointing with the tip of her knife to the body I'm staring at. They commission them in Padua and Bologna, and Bern in Paris, so they don't need to cut open cadavers to teach their students what the inside of a person looks like. I press my fingers to Sim's pulse point, an absent-minded monitoring, and it's a strange duet to feel that steady thump against my skin while looking at a perfect model of the human heart, veins and arteries and chambers exposed. How did you come to make waxworks if you were raised in a pirate fleet? Joanna asks, only a bit of judgment bleeding into the word pirate. The same way any African comes to Europe, Quick replies. The ship I served on was captured. My crew was enslaved. I was purchased by Herr Kraus, the waxmaster, and brought here to be trained. I didn't know slavery was legal in Switzerland, I say. Quick halves an onion with a single neat cut. It's legal everywhere there's money in the slave trade, and the bankers here have deep pockets. Quick only has a single bowl for the stew, so we pass it among the three of us, handing the spoon back and forth and sometimes fishing out chunks of potatoes and cabbage with our fingers when the others take too long. Outside, the storm batters the shop, the planks moaning and the stove rattling as the wind whips down the chimney. Strong weather can make even the safest place feel haunted. My clothes are still damp from the snow, and the soup is so hot it scalds my tongue, but I keep shoveling it down until I can't taste a thing. It just feels so good to be warm inside and full of food. I think of the crusty loaves of bread Callum would bake to pair with the winter stews that I learned to make during using scraps from his pasty fillings. It was a process, and Callum put up with many nights of overly salted meat and broth, so thick we had to chew it. Once, after a particularly miserable showing at venison and tomatoes, he said the bread deserved butter, and I said he also deserved butter than the stew I had given him. And though I generally find puns to be the lowest form of humour, I said it because I knew Callum would like it. And he laughed, the sound as warm and round as a fresh loaf. Maybe that was love. Who knows? Quick let us sleep in the workshop that night, while she takes the loft above the stairs. Herr Kraus, she assures us, left from Padua last week and isn't due to return until the end of the month. There are no windows in this workshop, and as the fire starts to die and the threat of putting out the lamp grows imminent, the pieces of wax assembled around the room seem to grow more ghoulish. Not threatening, but present, like statues of saints in a cathedral keeping a vigil. I check on Sim again before returning to Joanna, who is sitting with her mother's effects spread out over the floor before her, her back to the stove and knees pulled up so that her skirt canyons between them. It's a most unladylike way to sit, and reminds me of childhood. I crouch down across from her. Do you want to stay the night here, or go back to the boarding house? When she doesn't answer, I tap a finger against her shin. Joanna. She looks up. What did you find? She scrapes a hand through her hair, pushing a few errant strands out of her face. Other than those vials, there isn't much in the bag. Art supplies and toilette and a petrified piece of cheese. I glance at the leather portfolio, lying untouched in the front of her. What about the papers? I haven't looked yet. Why not? Because what if she was working on something awful? She presses her hand to her face. What if she and Platt were conspiring? What if she's not who I thought she was? All my life I was sure I could be whoever I wanted because my mother was herself in all things. But what if that was just an excuse for ugliness? Then let her be ugly, I reply. Because you're not her, and you're glorious. Even though I like shoes and lace and anything brightly coloured. She looks down at her hands, the fringe of her eyelashes casting smoky shadows down her cheeks. Even though I'm not who you want me to be anymore. Of course she wasn't the same as she had been when we last parted. She was a brighter, polished version, silver purified in the belly of a crucible until it glinted star-bright. Beside her, I feel stale and moulding and unchanged, because if I had not believed entirely in who I was and what I wanted, I'd never survive. Joanna had let the world change her, let the winds polish her edges and the rain wear her smooth. She was the same person I had known, had always known, just a version that was more completely her. There's no one I would rather you be, I reply. She runs her fingers along the edge of the folio, sucking her cheeks in, then carefully unwraps the string binding it closed. The hard leather snaps at the release, and Joanna and I both peer inside. The folio is stuffed with papers, some bound together with twine, others loose and weathered. Joanna and I both reach in, scooping out a handful of scraps from notes and sketches and mathematical equations with their answers circled. I skim a few, trying to read the splotched, frantic hand and make sense of anything I'm seeing. Look here. Joanna pulls a single page from the folio, double the size of any of the others and folded into quarters to fit inside. Joanna unfolds it. Then she and I both take an edge and hold it up to the lamplight. It's a map, though that's all I know to say of it. It's hand-drawn like all the other pages, but clearly meticulous, careful work. It is done in ink rather than pencil, thick, confident strokes, The short one sits at a desk in good lighting and steadies their hand before beginning. There's the start of an intricate border around the edges and a compass in one corner. A few places are splotched with colour, as though she hadn't time to finish filling it in. Was your mother a cartographer? I ask. I don't know, though she lived in Amsterdam for a time. When I look back at her blankly, she clarifies. That's where all the best map makers are. What's it a map of, though? I fish my spectacles from my pocket and smash them onto my face, nearly poking myself in the eye as one of my hands is occupied keeping the paper in place. Look here, that's Algiers, I point. And the Alborian Sea, so that's Spain. There's Gibraltar. I trace my finger along the fine lines inked over the water, the paper puckered slightly where she had begun to watercolour. So what's this here? Joanna taps an island in the Atlantic, all the tides and current lines seemingly centering around it. I don't know. I saw a fair number of maps of this area when I was travelling, but I've never seen that before. It's very small, maybe too small for most cartographers to market. Or maybe that's what she's mapping, Joanna says. Maybe whatever she was looking for or working on, perhaps it's there. She glances up from the map. Do you think she knows? Who? Your sailor pirate friend, Sim. I think she knows something about it, I reply. More than we do. Joanna presses her teeth into her bottom lip, her fingers tracing the dotted lines on the map. Maybe we could ask her. She may not tell us anything, even if she does know. But this is what she was looking for, isn't it? This map. She's a sailor, and she wasn't after my mum's paintbrushes. It's got to be this map, and if she wants it, she must know where it leads and why it's so valuable. So what are you saying? I ask. I think we should stay here, Joanna says. Frau Engel is paid for the night. She won't mind if we aren't sleeping in the bed so long as she's made her coin. We can go tomorrow and get my things, but I don't... Her eyes dart over to Sim. I need to talk to her. Decisions, I hope she'll talk to us.
More?
No. Sorry.
Come on, I got used to having you on tap. I could have like 8 hours.
That wasn't even a mean, cliffhanger this time.
We just like you, okay?
I thought you were going to end as they opened the folder and we weren't going to get what was in there.
So funny. Yeah, thank you. So what do you guys think?
More is what we think.
Find some treasure. Surely this is where it turns into a piratey adventure.
Yeah, that's the only logical solution. Also, is our new friend going to come with us on our piratey adventure? Because I quite like her.
Which new friend?
The wax lady.
Oh, the wax lady. Quick.
There we go.
I don't know. We'll have to find out. We'll have to find out next time. I'm sorry, Katie. I'm going to bring you...
That next one is tomorrow.
That's true. That's better than the 4-day wait we had after the last one.
Yeah, that was too long.
Wasn't it 5 days? No, 4, yeah. We actually have got back on the normal day.
Yeah.
Losing track of the time.
What is time?
Time is an illusion. Lunchtime doubly so.
Oh yeah, Ara has been wanting to say hello to you.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi, Ara.
She's been coming and showing you her glove and anklets and bracelets made of Play-Doh, but
Oh, lovely.
we're all doing things where you weren't looking at the screen.
Can I tell you about something epic we did on Saturday?
Absolutely.
So at the theater for a prior production, they purchased 2 hoverboards, like not actual ones that are actually hovering, but you know, the ones with like 2 wheels that you stand on and you kind of guide them with your weight. They're so much fun. Like once you've got the hang of it, they're so much fun. And we were all still in our costumes. And you can play it. There are also Bluetooth boxes in the hoverboards, so you can pair them with your phone and play music while you ride them. And I was in my Hecate outfit, like with long flowing robes, and we played what's it called by Wagner, the Ride of the Valkyries. And I was just floating around as a witch, like with my epic flowing robes, going. I think this
Jenny,
comes
you're
That's just
great.
excellent.
Yeah.
You have excellent choice in pastimes.
I'm so happy about my current life.
Hey, it's so lovely to hear.
I mean, about that part of my life, my thesis still sucks, but at least I have this.
You finish your thesis?
No, I'm currently still gathering data and everything's going wrong. Like all theses do.
It's the way of all theses.
Yeah.
Yeah. It gives you something to write about in the methodology section.
Exactly.
So, it's, yeah.
Well, currently it's just the getting back into it after 1 year of not being able to do anything because of COVID. And I've changed laptops in between and I'm still having to figure out all the like minor tech issues that are like just silly and annoying. Yeah. So nothing major, but just getting back into it and figuring stuff out.
That can be hard. It doesn't need to be a big thing to like be stressful or a drain, and especially that thing where you're not quite sure how to start or where to get momentum from is like
no, it's mostly just like really silly tech issues, like me not having the software on my new laptop yet and having to find out where to get it again because it's been 4 years since I got it the last time, and it's just and also I don't have the rooms anymore that I used to use, and it's just everything went wrong on Friday. It was a very annoying day, but getting everything figured out now.
you just have to bring your badass witch energy to it. It's gonna be down. Go and get on the hoverboard and play Ride of the Valkyries. I just like that would make us all feel better. Maybe we should all do that.
I mean, it's so much fun because it's so intuitive. Like once you get over trying to balance yourself because the board does that for you, it's so intuitive and it's so much fun. And my friend who plays Macbeth in this production of Macbeth, he directed the play that they bought the hoverboards for, and he said sometimes he'd get there like a whole hour early just to drive the thing around on stage and brainstorm while he did it. It's so much fun, and it looks so, like once you master it, it looks so fucking epic because you can't see how the person steers. Good night, girl.
I'll wait for Bracken to come back, I think, before we should say goodbye to the catch-up group.
This sounds like a good plan.
Jenny, how did you manage to play around on stage with a prop before the play without the stage manager beating him to death with it?
We're not that kind of theater. We don't have a stage manager. Like the director is the stage manager, basically. It's a small theater.
Going to say, touching props before the show that aren't your prop, or even if they are, is a brave thing to do around a stage manager.
Yeah, no, we don't have one of those.
Fair enough.
As a former stage manager, really, I never did any stage managing that was that serious. So I don't think I ever got that mad at anyone for that. I just was like, okay, but if you break it before the show, you are fixing it before the show. And this is on you if anything goes wrong. And you know everyone will be disappointed if we're fucked for this prop. And like, give people the accountability, yeah. Nothing ever broke before a show. People were always like, that's reasonable, and never did anything too dumb.
No.
I mean,
stage
these are fucking hard to break as well. Like, you break yourself before you break the thing, unless you drive it off like a cliff or downstairs or something.
The stage managers I knew were more I will hang you off the rafters by your own intestine if you touch anything that you're not supposed to on show night.
I mean, everyone's precious about their own work, right?
I mean, we're allowed to hang out in our costumes after the play to film for hours on end and get drunk in our costumes.
Wow.
Oh, Bracken and Rory and Rizzo are back. Should we say goodbye to the catch-up crew?
Oh, we should absolutely say goodbye to the catch-up crew. Sorry, I just wandered off.
That's okay. You returned with a dog. Everything's good.
Do we have any advice for the catch-up crew tonight?
Be your inner witch. Let out your inner witch.
Yeah, let out your inner witch.
Through the ride of the Valkyries on a hoverboard.
To the ride of the Valkyries on a hoverboard, yeah.
That's like the best life advice I've ever heard.
Yeah.
Should write a poem about it.
All right.
Bye, catch-up crew.
Bye, catch-up crew.
I love you.